Hey everyone, it's Patricia Worby. It's one of my many series of conversations, but this time I'm doing something quite different. I haven't done this before, and I am talking to someone that I have previously worked with as a client. And luckily, I've actually got to know Julie a little bit since that time, and it's been wonderful to see her transition from where she was to where she is now. So I'd like to welcome you, Julie, and thank you for agreeing to take part in this little conversation with me.
Thank you. I feel quite honoured.
You're very welcome. I wanted really to ask you how it was working with me, because there are a lot of people out there suffering as you were suffering, and maybe a little bit, doubtful of whether it might work for them, or a little bit scared of coming into therapy in any way. So I wanted to get it from the horse's mouth, as it were, for someone who's been through it with me. And so I'm just gonna ask you, what was life like for you prior to coming to work with me?
I had chronic fatigue syndrome for 9 years, and I worked through that time as a primary school music teacher. I was part-time, so it meant that I could, as long as I could get to work for 3.5 days, then the sofa was my friend for most of the rest of it. I did, however, sometimes the fatigue got so much and I had 6 months off at a time. And during that time, I kept researching and I read various materials. And I came across the Chrysalis effect, who reckoned to cure ME, chronic fatigue syndrome, which was exciting. And they lured me in with their free month, and I signed up. And the best thing about them was that they said you can recover, you can be cured. And it was such a breath of fresh air, because everything I'd had up till then was managing the symptoms, and not, we weren't expected to get better. So I was spending a lot of time on my sofa. If I saw a flat surface, I wanted to lie down on it. I could do bits and pieces. I could get a lunch ready. I managed to keep on top of a garden. I could meet friends maybe a couple of times a week. If I did do something for more than an hour, then I would pay back for it with post-exertional malaise, PEM, or Auntie Pem, as we like to call her, which meant I could be laid up for anything from 2 days to a week. So it was hard going, but I kept looking. And when I got onto the Chrysalis effect, they offered half an hour with your therapist of your choice, and you were on that list. And the part that appealed to me was that you've got a scientific background, and I felt that there was more to you than a light touch of therapy. You hadn't just done a 13-week therapy course, you knew stuff. And you were very much into emotional trauma, and although I wasn't thinking that I had experienced trauma, certainly not big T trauma, I kept thinking it's not nutrition, it's not exercise, there must be something going on that I don't know about. So I booked up for my free half hour with you, and we went forward quite quickly.
We did. Yeah, I mean, I offer the half hour very much in the spirit of connection, because I always want to work with people that have met me beforehand. I don't want them coming straight into therapy not knowing how I work or who I am, or because the connection is so much a part of what you do together,
Yeah, I very much appreciated that, because it meant, well, we both got an idea of whether we wanted to work with each other or not. But I think that was vital.
I do also. And I know that people do they are surprised perhaps that someone would offer something for free, but it is, I'm not just doing this because it's the business I run, it's because it's my passion, and getting people well is something I just love to do. And it's interesting what you said about the Chrysalis effect. They're the first people that I came across that ever said you could recover, right? And because when I went through my crisis, if you like, when I was 34, about 15 years ago, maybe longer, actually, thinking about it, dread to think how long ago, that the Chrysalis effect didn't exist, and there was nothing really, there was nothing to offer you other than medications to deal with the symptoms. So you would get sleeping tablets, or you would get antidepressants, because often they said it's depression, and nobody recognized that it was a metabolic disease caused by, usually a combination of things: toxicity, emotional overwhelm, and maybe lifestyle factors as well, usually a high stress environment. So it's very much a part of what I do now, is to offer people hope and to show them that this isn't rocket science. It is scientific. You're right. It does have a scientific basis. It's based on the nervous system and how dysregulated the nervous system can get, and how emotions are part of that network. They actually are nervous system regulators. Anyway, it's not the purpose of today to talk about the theory, but it's very much a part of what I do, is give people a window into why they get ill and a route out. That's the most important thing that I do. And we started working together, and as you say, quite quickly, I think, because you wanted to get cracking, I know. And I can remember the early sessions, because you were quite unwell. It was hard for you, I think. And quite quickly we realized that there was a lot of emotional sort of processing that hadn't really happened for you, for various reasons. And we enabled you to feel what you hadn't been able to feel in my presence. And we do that through the body, obviously, introducing you to some of the techniques that I use. So how was that experience for you, going through that? And you can be completely honest if it wasn't that easy, or you found it a bit bewildering or whatever. But
I found we were using Skype for the sessions, and it just didn't seem too different really to having face-to-face. The huge advantage for me was that you recorded the sessions, so afterwards I could revisit them. You encouraged me not to make notes at the time and just watch them back, which was great, and I could still have kept the sessions if I'd felt I needed to, even now. I first of all, I wasn't convinced. We weren't exactly kindred spirits. I came to you because you had some knowledge that would cure me, and it turned out to be that was exactly right. And as we have worked together, I've got to know you much better. But it just felt you knew exactly the right questions to ask, and to help me delve into what had gone on before in my life. We just got through lots of stuff quite quickly, and changed my life. I mean, it must have been, we had the initial half hour, and then there was an hour and a half of introduction. But I think the 3rd hour session after that was the sort of key one that seemed to jerk my energy blockage. I'm sure you've got better language to talk about that in. And basically, I've never looked back, except that I was still just unfit from having sat around for 9 years just trying to go to work, sort of thing. So I've just managed to improve from then on. Yeah. My energy levels changed dramatically.
Yes. So if people are concerned listening to this, that you go into therapy and you're in therapy for like years, and it's quite an interesting difference, isn't it, to say that at the 3rd session there was a breakthrough.
It was quite, I think it was well, I've referred to it as magical because it honestly felt like it.
Yeah.
But I think I was one of the lucky ones. I find it quite easy to sort of, I don't have any qualms about telling you everything. So I felt that I was giving you all the information I could. I wasn't holding back things. I think I had to be ready to find you. I had to be ready to open up every can of worms I could think of.
Yeah.
Not that I've got a horrendous background, but I was ready to talk about it, and you were ready to explain why. I just had so many emotions that I hadn't been allowed to or encouraged to express as a child, and I just had to hide myself behind not knowing who I was, really.
Yeah, it's a very important point, isn't it? That I should say, you don't have to go through every single thing that's ever happened to you, but you do have to deal with some core experiences. Everybody has core experiences, and for you they weren't big T traumas, but they were still significant.
Yes,
they were things that had overwhelmed you at the time that you hadn't been able to process, and so we enabled you to process as an adult now. And in doing that, of course, you release a lot of the energy that is being kind of blocked. I loved it. What did you call jerked something, or anyway, whatever I did. I look at it as I release the blockage that's in the way of your body healing. Because if it believes you are under threat, it will keep you in this frozen state. So that's what happens. And then ME, CFS is a frozen state neurologically. It's the bottom level of your nervous system. So, but when you're ready, and most people know when you're ready, because not that you necessarily want to reveal everything, but you've got to, yes, you've got to be willing to do the work, and you've got to be willing to be honest and open with the person you're working with, because the more honesty I have, the better I can help you. You know, if I know what's really going on, and usually even if you don't tell me, I can see stuff, so I'm aware of what's happening, because I'm very acutely focused on your emotional expression, and it's something I have as a tool in my toolbox. Of growing up with an anxious mother, you often had to look out for expressions because nothing would be said. And so I've just luckily got that skill where I can spot a transient emotion in someone's physiology, you know, in their face or their body posture. So it's possible to show you how to experience those, you know, because a lot of people who are denied access to their emotions don't know what their emotions feel like.
Oh, absolutely. I couldn't, and I still have to work on it, but it's not making me ill anymore.
No.
And that is huge. That's a huge thing. So yes, I couldn't identify. I mean, I knew if I was happy or sad, but I couldn't really. That was about it, really. And I didn't fully experience either of them properly. I used to cry copiously at lots of things, but I couldn't really tell you why. It would just, anything that would happen and I could cry, but yeah. I didn't really understand what was going on.
Even happy situations, I remember.
Yes.
Would make you cry, like somebody giving you a present or telling you something good about you that they valued, and you would just burst into tears. And I mean, that is the cardinal sign of emotional overwhelm, because you've not learned that you can feel something and it be okay.
Yes.
Because it was never held for you as a child, like someone could witness your experience and you'd still be present for you, connected with you. And so it overwhelms you, and that's usually when someone bursts into tears, or they bury it in their bodies, or a combination of both. And so we get these chronic fatigue related symptoms where the emotions, instead of being expressed and therefore the energy of those released, it gets buried inside and keeping you in this locked in state. So it's a major problem and completely missed in modern medicine, completely, utterly.
Yeah.
I'm sure you did plenty of things before you came to me.
I had, I was lucky. I had supportive GPs who did believe that my illness existed and would sign me off for months at a time, and would help me get onto various courses. I'd be I'd been on mindfulness courses, and I'd had GET, graded exercise therapy, at the right time actually, but that's another story. I had CBT, I'd had lots of things, but they were all managing the illness. They didn't go anywhere near trying to improve the situation.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I'm going to ask you this, because some of the methods I use are a bit unusual. You know, we're asking people to do sort of self-touch exercise like havening, or sometimes I use eye movement desensitization. And for somebody who's never done any of that, it can feel a little strange at first. Did you find that you sort of after a while forgot that it was strange, or you got used to doing it? And
very, very quickly, I had already discovered tapping, EFT tapping, and tried it with bits of success on odd things, but havening I hadn't come across, and it still can feel a little odd. But EMDR, I loved it because that was the thing, that was what shifted my chronic fatigue for me. So even after the first time, I was quite happy to get stuck in, bring it on.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you'd set up the situation to use it properly. I mean, not just anybody could have the same effect, I'm sure.
No, and indeed, that's correct. And the havening is important to ground you in the here and now, while we then explore the past. If we went straight into exploring the past without grounding you in the present, the effect would never have been as profound as it was, because you have to feel safe in order to release. You understand that's what the body is doing. It's sort of keeping it for you as a sort of memento of past overwhelm, because it wants you to avoid it in future. So we have to experience safety first for you to be willing to let go and experience it.
Yes.
So, but EMDR, the eye movement process, is very interesting, and it actually reprograms memory. So instead of it being a memory of overwhelm, it becomes something that happened to you in the past that's no longer present for you, and then that obviously reduces your stress response, so you can start to heal, and that's what happened for you very quickly. And it's interesting you saying, you know, the third session, because I do remember the kind of moment it happened, and it felt like you landed in your body, and I think I said something like, "You've just landed," and you were like, I think I have, you know. It felt very significant, didn't it?
Yes, hugely. And within the next week, it was lovely weather, and I think we had various friends coming to visit, and usually after an hour, I'd sometimes even set an alarm clock to say, go and retire to your bedroom, Julie, be on your own for half an hour and then rejoin. And people were used to me doing that. Very strange behaviour for anybody that doesn't understand chronic fatigue syndrome. But I found that we've got one particular couple who came, and I was out there because we were still outside because of COVID, so we were outside for a couple of hours, and then I did retire. But I sort of remembered you saying to me, you can control this. You don't need to run away into your safe space. You'll just need to tell your body that it can do what it hasn't been able to for years. And you can go back out there and you'll be fine. And I did go back out for another hour, which was just unheard of. And that built up more and more confidence that everything was just changing.
Yeah.
And the key thing, which I believed straight away, maybe I'm just gullible, but I don't know. But you always said you won't go backwards. Anything that improves from my treatment, my therapy with you, you will not go backwards. You will only ever go forwards. There might be the odd blip, but I believe that wholeheartedly, and that's been exactly the case. I will not have chronic fatigue syndrome again. I'm not waiting to crash, which is the terminology people use, but no, it's not going to happen to me. Been there, done that.
You've dealt with it. You've dealt with the root cause, okay? And as we've said, the root causes are always a combination of things. It's never just one thing. We're not saying it's only emotional. There's always a combination.
Yeah.
But the emotional component is the big one, and the one that most people do not tackle because it's not the easiest. You know, you can maybe change your diet, you can rest, change your environment, change your lifestyle, but the emotional stuff is very difficult to do on your own because you're not aware of what you don't know.
Yeah, so I became aware of that within the Chrysalis effect. They had a wheel with 8 different parts to your own private jigsaw. So it was nutrition, exercise, rest, all those. And the one that people, I read somewhere, the last one that people will go to is the emotional one. Yeah. And yeah, that for a lot of people, and I'm sure they don't want to believe it, but I think for a lot of people, that's the one they should be going to first. It's the one that will make the biggest difference. The easiest one is nutrition because you can control it easily. You can just order what food you want from your supermarket. It will even be delivered if you really want to. But sorting out emotions is a much harder thing to do. People talk about hard work and don't realise until they actually start to dig how hard it can be.
It's hard on your own. It's almost impossible to get outside the brain that's created these feelings.
Yes.
To witness yourself objectively, because you are basically in an illusion created by your own mind of what is going on in the world and who you are. You're living in an illusion, and it takes another person to witness that and say, is this accurate, this illusion that you've created, this meaning that you've given to something, this perception? And you get to question that, and as soon as you get to question it, you bring your brain into integration. And that's the benefit of this work, really, is not just releasing some of the pent-up energy, but it's allowing the brain to integrate that new experience. And so you become whole, literally. You integrate yourself and lose this mask of, you know, managing.
Yes.
And the person that you were in order to cope with the 9 years that you suffered, and all the time previously as well. You know, the Julie that you were, who was kind of a little bit behind a screen, if you like. We all are. It's not saying that you in particular, but we all are to some extent behind a mask. And so it's not just healing the symptoms, it's actually allowing you to express yourself authentically. And that's the beauty of it. So tell me, final question, what's life like for you now, Julie?
Well, it's very different. I haven't lain on the sofa for quite a while. I started sessions with you in June last year, and every day for years up till then I'd marked myself out of 10 for how much energy I'd got, and it was very subjective and not totally reliable, but it was something for me to go on. And I'd go as low as 2 or 3 out of 10, lots of 5s and 6s out of 10, and I would often think, oh, if I could only just stick with 5 or 6 out of 10, I could cope with this illness forever. But no. Anyway, in June I was going between 4 and 5 and 6, but by September I actually gave up writing those numbers down, because I realised it was always kind of 8, 9, 10, and then I didn't really know, I couldn't judge it anymore what level it was. But I also realised I didn't need to have that kind of record anymore. I was not back to normal, but just energies out of the window. I can think about doing other things. So in September last year, we were lucky and went away to Spain, and every day walked 2, 3, 4 miles, I should think, up and down hills, just in the process of sort of living in a slightly hilly town for a while. It's this year I've just taken up Morris dancing. Wow. As you do. That's great fun. But I also started having tap dancing lessons, and I went back to doing Pilates, which I hadn't been able to do for years. I'm stuck with the Pilates, and I'm still looking for what the authentic me really wants to do with my life. But meanwhile, I've started volunteering at the local food bank, which just makes me feel good to be giving something back again after all these years. So yes, very different life, and just busy. I mean, I seem to have 3 or 4 things going on each day at the moment, which is, I mean, that's normal for so many people, but a year ago, if I had 1 thing a day, that was enough, thank you very much. So huge difference. And I don't have to think about pacing myself, or I can't do that because I'm already doing that the day before. I don't have to think about it.
That's the big difference, is you no longer have to keep the count of everything, how much energy you're expending, how you feel in the morning when you wake up. In fact, you can just take it for granted that you're going to have enough energy for your day.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what people with chronic fatigue miss, isn't it? They don't have that.
Yeah, hugely. And it's such a difficult disease for anyone to understand who hasn't got it or hasn't lived with somebody with it. It's
I agree.
It's impossible to explain the tiredness.
Yeah, well, I'm busy trying to explain that in a recording an ad at the moment where I say, you know, chronic fatigue is not tiredness.
No, it's fatigue. It is fatigue.
It is a metabolic condition of down-regulating your energy systems. All right, so it's not the same at all. And therefore we have to get out of the mindset that says people bring this on themselves or they should be able to get out of it. It's a biological response. It needs a psychobiological solution. And so, you know, taking the guilt away, or the shame of getting ill, because it could happen to anyone, regardless of how hard you worked or how fit you were. It's irrelevant. It's what you experienced in your past, usually childhood, and sometimes early adulthood as well. What happened to you is a more important question than what's wrong with you. And so that's the message I want to give people. And thank you for talking to me. And I look forward to hearing more about the authentic Julie and what she's involved with. She's obviously doing lots at the minute. Do you have any final thoughts for people considering doing this work that you'd like to say?
I struggled to spend money on me because I'd never put myself top of the list. But I'd have paid double to get where I am now. Take out another mortgage, just go for it. It's really worthwhile. The change is dramatic. I am retired now. I retired hoping that would solve the chronic fatigue syndrome issue, and it didn't. I spent 4 years in retirement and still with it. But I'm up to the energy stakes now where I could go back to work if I wanted to. I mean, I'm over the other side, so I know that it's not, there's more to life than work, but certainly I could bounce back to work if I had to, and that is huge.
So life has got far more options for you than it had before, and
definitely
that's wonderful. It's great to hear. And thank you for, you know, giving people the encouragement to take part in this kind of healing, which, you know, is available to anyone. There isn't anything you need specially. You only need a nervous system, which most everyone has, and to kind of lean on me a little bit, or whoever you're working with. That this is a possibility for everyone. Healing is absolutely possible, and we just want other people to know this. So thank you, and thank you for, you know, agreeing to give your experience, because it's so much easier than me just telling people, well, look, it works, you know, it does work, you know, to hear it from someone who has clearly, because I've actually, you know, I've met you and saw your energy, and it was completely, I would say, normal. I had no indication that you had anything wrong. You bounced away. You were in between two of your 3 things that day.
Yes.
So was wonderful to witness that, and really it's a joy, it's an absolute joy to have worked with you. So I am going to put some links in the chat, in the description, just if people want to contact me. But thank you again. Thank you for taking part. Thank you for giving me the chance to ask you all these complicated questions about how you found things. So
my pleasure.
You're very welcome. And look forward to hearing more about what happens for you. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Patricia. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.